Well, hi there. Warm welcome. You watching Times Now's Blueprint Explosive Exclusive, and I'm Meghna Deka. Well, today, of course, it is back to another round of Trump versus Howard. And this one is very interesting because we are looking at what really has led to this face-off and how it is simply escalating. We are going to have today on the show a man who is integral to Harvard, a professor at Harvard, as well as a Republican who's going to explain President Trump's stance. But let's tell you how after a funding freeze comes the visa ban. Well, this means uncertainty for foreign students, specifically read the Desi students who were looking forward to their Harvard dreams coming true. With US President Donald Trump, well, he has now announced a ban on new visas for all the Harvard-bound foreign students over the national security, as he calls it. Well, this order is all set to escalate the fight between Trump and America's oldest, richest, one of the most prestigious colleges, and an Ivy League college at that. Of course, he has cited a threat to national security. President Trump has said that it is necessary to restrict the entry of foreign nationals who seek to enter the US solely or principally to study at Harvard or in an exchange visitor program, which is hosted by the Harvard University. This is what President Trump has said. And he said Trump has written that such foreign nationals are detrimental to the interest of the US, and not just that, as per Trump's Harvard conduct, has rendered it as an unsuitable destination for foreign students and researchers. This is not me, this is President Trump saying Harvard is an unsuitable destination. Well, apart from the threat to national security, President Trump's administration has also alleged that foreign ties, secrecy, failure to address anti-Semitism are just some of the reasons as to why he feels that it is unsuitable. The Ivy League University, on its part, however, has responded to this order by saying that this is yet another retaliatory step, and it is completely illegal, they claim, by the Trump administration that is in violation of Harvard's First Amendment rights. In fact, the university has vowed to protect its international students. We've been seeing several of these protests across the Harvard campus. In fact, more than a quarter of Harvard students, as we've been telling you earlier as well in the show, do come from other countries. Of course, there are about 788 Desi students as well. In fact, let's get you some of the timelines which are coming in of the event so that it makes it much clearer as to what is the magnitude of this face-off that we've seen between Trump and Howard, where it all began in May 2025. First thing that was done was a funding freeze. The federal government freezes funding to Howard. They cited national security and foreign influence concerns at the time. In fact, the same month later on, the administration attempts to bar Harvard from enrolling foreign students, targeting its global admissions pipeline. They made vetting, for example, much more harder now, and consulates were told them. And now you have Trump delivering the final blow, a visa ban on Harvard-bound international students, which leaves, of course, thousands of students stranded worldwide. So why has the Trump administration banned visas specifically to students who aspire to go to the most prestigious, oldest universities of America? Well, the White House fact sheet explains the reasons. Let's go through it one by one so that you know what the fact sheet as per the White House is. They say that there is a sharp rise in campus crime, and Harvard is turning a blind eye to the multiple conduct violations which have been coming in. Also, it has said that there is inadequate reporting into the Homeland Security. Just 3 students have been flagged, despite the fact that they say that there is a growing concern. Only 3 of them have been flagged off officially. Also, the university says that it has failed to share disciplinary records, raising serious red flags as per Trump administration. Over $150 million, they say, have been received by China, saying these are the funds which are flowing into China, and this, they say, is one of the biggest concerns. Chinese Communist Party paramilitary members are also being hosted by Harvard, is another one of the big threats of this man right here, President Trump. In fact, he has also pointed out, and so has the White House, that there is joint research that could aid China's military ambitions, something which has been red flagged. Also, that Harvard labeled as the CCP's top party school abroad. Even Xi Jinping's daughter, remember, studied here in the early 2010s. Now, there's violent anti-Semitic incidents which have been swept under the rug as per the White House. Foreign students, agitators have been purportedly involved in some of these. Despite a Supreme Court rebuke which came in 2023, Harvard, it says, presses on with race-based admissions. This is the allegation, race-based admissions. Critics, of course, say that it is denying equal opportunity to hard-working Americans. Well, this, of course, is the White House fact sheet. So how many students are we really looking at when we look at the foreign students of Harvard who are going to be impacted by this order? Well, let's break it down to you. The number of students who are enrolled in Harvard, we've been giving you some of these stats already. So there you have it behind me. In fact, I believe I'm covering those numbers there. So there you have it on your screens. The number of enrolled students, 24,519. Number of non-US residents, 6,700. So about a quarter of them are foreign students. The total number of foreign students comes to about 27.3% if you look at the numbers specifically. This is what the Harvard University itself has said. But who really are going to be caught in the crossfire? If you look at the number of foreign students, which is 6,800, the number of Indian students, 788. Now remember, this is not the number of students whose visas have been blocked, because those are aspirational visas, those are students who aspire to go to Harvard. So these are not impacted by the latest ban. However, they are being impacted by the several steps which have been taken by President Trump against Harvard. So just keep that in mind as well. But it is the lives of 788 Indian students who may just be impacted with this war that we have seen between Harvard and President Trump. In fact, let me go across to our panelists. Today, we are joined here on the show by Professor Fernando M. Reimers, who is part of the Ford Foundation. He's also a professor of practice of international education and the director of the Global Education Innovation Initiative at the Harvard University. Appreciate it, Professor, joining us. But we are also joined by today David Sofair. He's a Republican strategic. He's joining us live from Washington, D.C. My first question, of course, comes across to Professor Reimers, because these are very sharp reactions which are coming in against you, against your campus. As per President Trump, those in Harvard are radicalized lunatics. How do you respond to that? Is that true? You live there, you work there.
Thank you very much for hosting me. It's a pleasure to be with you. Let me first say that last week, exactly, we celebrated commencement at Harvard, a very important occasion, not only to celebrate our graduates, but to restate our values, the values of this university, the values of pluralism, of openness to the world, of valuing our shared humanity across different identities, of recognizing the value of international cooperation to solve shared challenges. Now, those values stand in contrast with the repeated attempts of the Trump administration to ban foreign students and scholars from attending Harvard. There is no obvious rationale for this ban. The presidential decree justifies it as a concern for national security, but provides no evidence. Why target Harvard specifically? The decree indicates that Harvard has not cooperated with the government. But that is untrue. Harvard has provided to the government the information which is required by law. What Harvard has not done is to provide information that is protected by federal law under FERPA. And that is information about the courses that students are taking and information about educational disciplinary sanctions. For example, if a student doesn't come to class regularly, he will be sanctioned or she will be sanctioned. But that information is provided by federal law. So in effect, the only thing that Harvard has done is to refuse to break the law in response to that invitation. Now, one has to wonder, since there is so little coherence in the case that the government has made to justify this measure, whether this is about something else. And there are several analysts who have suggested three possibilities. One possibility is that this is just a distraction. there is growing discontent in America with the economic policies of the administration. Even within the ruling party, Elon Musk, who was a close ally of the president, recently left his post and has been a vocal critic of the proposed budget legislation. There are critics within the ruling party of this bill, and more people are wondering whether the economic policies of the administration, creating unprecedented levels of debt, are in the interest of the nation. So one way to read this presidential decree is as a distraction from the real issues that the American public cares about, which is whether we're going to have a viable economy. The second possibility is that this is about a cultural war, about the desire to use universities to promote an ideology which is not really about pluralism and intellectual diversity, but about using universities to indoctrinate students into some of the ideas that are represented by the government coalition. The Secretary of Education was asked yesterday by Representative Mark Takano, California representative, whether if Harvard refused to hire a Holocaust denier, someone who says that the Holocaust did not take place, as a member of the history department, would be considered by the government an ideological litmus test. And the Secretary of Education refused to answer this basic question. The third possibility which has been suggested is based on the fact that our media has reported that President Trump demands the removal of Harvard's president, Alan Garber, and the chair of the Board of Trustees, Penny Critzer. He has not made similar demands of any other institution. And since President Garber and Trustee Pritzker are both Jewish, in fact, President Garber is the only third Jewish president in our 400 history, and is the only president who has commissioned a study of anti-Semitism in America. It is reasonable to conclude that the administration's actions are anti-Semitic, if not in intent, in appearance.
Oh, that's very interesting. That's very interesting because we haven't yet gotten any kind of a confirmation on that, if that is going to be the next big step, because every day there is a step against Howard. Also, it's also interesting, Professor Reimers, that Howard has refused to relent. There are others who have. Some of them, however, have still been punished. For example, Columbia. But we'll come to all of that. Let me go across to David Sofair. Now, let's go one by one with what Professor Reimers has said, David Sofair. Is this a distraction?
Thank you very much for having me.
Pleasure to have you on the show, as always, David. First one. This is the charge coming in from Howard. Is this a distraction? Because Trump doesn't want the world to focus on the fact that he's losing alliance partners by the hour, and alliance partners such as Elon Musk.
Look, Trump isn't losing any partnership with Elon Musk, and the idea that Doge and government efficiency being a bad thing or a demonized thing is a bad thing.
He wasn't the shadow president? Forgive me for asking, but I must ask you that.
No, he's not a shadow president at all. He had a short-term contract, and he was in a government advisory role to clean up historic levels of overspending and government bureaucracy. Now, in regards to Harvard, again, like I said on the previous show that I was on, the ball is on Harvard's court. So they have not complied with several things, and it's unfortunate because this whole thing...
But they're saying that they've complied by everything that the law wants them to.
No, excuse me. They have not complied whatsoever with any of the reasonable requests that the administration has made in regards to public safety. Okay, we have immigration.
Reasonable requests are different from the law. So, David Sofair, because we are here in India, if you could explain that to us, as per the law, what illegality has Howard peddled in? And if they haven't, are you talking about the request? If it is a request by the government, then that's not the law, is it?
No, so it has to do with immigration of the students, right? So the administration has requested students, right, and bad actors into the country. Yes, that does happen. The administration has said, no, we're not going to comply with those requests. So as a result, because they do have federal funding, unfortunately, the federal funding has been frozen, A, and B, the visas for these students, which is a shame, in my opinion, has also been frozen as well. Now, the third point is, this hasn't gone to court yet as well. So in regards to...
Probably will. Howard has taken the Trump administration to court.
Prepared statement or whatever, it's I think that having to say it's a distraction tactic is is,
Is the Trump administration anti-Semitic? That's the third charge that he had made.
So, I mean, that is.
Are you gunning for the chairperson of Harvard next?
When you have, I mean, so President Trump is probably the most pro-Jewish and pro-Israel president we've ever had. Now, Harvard as well, I mean, like other universities, are steeped in, unfortunately, and I hate to use this term, Marxist ideologies, which has been a new thing on some of these campuses, Harvard, Columbia, etc., where they have. I
find that surprising because Marxism, a form of communism, that because your government seems to be pretty close to Russia as well. So I find that interesting that you're so very worried about Marxist entry or rather, as you would say, radicalization of the Harvard students. But since we are running out of time, I'm sorry to have interrupted you. But David Sofair, I must quickly ask you, this is not the first time that America has had a republic government. Of course, there have been several other terms as well. How is it that till 1 month back, Harvard used to be your Ivy League university? I know, because people in India want to go there. Those who are educated enough, those who have talent enough, those who feel that they really want to up their game. It's one of the most looked upon universities when it comes the topmost choice for a lot of Indian students who are still there in Harvard. How is it that overnight Harvard went from the pride of America to the illegal university of America, which has radicalized lunatics in it?
Well, at the end of the day, the university has to comply. There's rules and regulations in the United States, and if you don't comply with these rules and regulations, you're going to have to pay a price. Unfortunately for Harvard, the price is the students aren't allowed to go now because of this terrible thing that the administration's caused. So again, the ball's in Harvard's court, and hopefully by the end of summer they can come to a resolution.
But I appreciate it, David Sofair, that you have admitted that it is not as per the law, but it is as per the government request that Harvard has turned down and denied so far. But I'm out of time. Professor Reimers, quick question. What is your message to the international students in Harvard, those who are already there, because about 788 Indians are there? There are many who would have hoped, but perhaps wouldn't get a student visa this time around. What's your message? What's Harvard going to do for them? What's Harvard saying to them?
Harvard faculty and administrators understand, as do most faculty in universities, that in the 21st century, it is essential for universities to be open to the world and to facilitate international collaborations, and those include having international students and scholars. Harvard was once a parochial university. The last time that happened was in 1850. We're going to do everything in our power to remain a university worthy of its name. It is unfortunate that a few people in the administration are intent in preventing our ability to do that. We have complied with all the requirements by law. The demands that Harvard has refused to comply are not rooted in law or in evidence. But time will tell. We have been around for 4 centuries. I suspect we will be around for 4 centuries more. And I'm pretty sure that when people write the very unfortunate period that America finds itself in, a period that is putting the American economy at risk with unprecedented levels of debt, some of those who will write that history will be academics at Harvard and other universities.
Well, this chapter definitely is going to go down in not just the history of America, the history of intellectualism, the history of academics of America as well, because this has been one of the biggest shifts, one of the biggest turns that we have seen in centuries now, perhaps. Appreciate it, Professor Reimers, for joining us here on the show, as well as David Sofair. Pleasure to have you on the show. So Harvard, is it actually radicalized or is it still woke? Well, we leave it up to you, the viewers. Without a short break, do join us in 2 minutes.